drive the innovation and development in the world. Just like the M-Pesa application was found here in Africa, so we can actually do it. And the final pillar is to take the opportunity of comparative advantage of the continent. This is the only continent which you can see it is like at the center. And we have all the resources, we have almost everything, we have the brains. But if we tap into the brains and we tap into the good leadership and good governance, we'll definitely be able to succeed just like the Southeast Asian countries did in a span of 20 years to 30 years, most of them. So let me conclude by saying that let us commit to ethical, strategic, and inclusive leadership and governance. More importantly, African Renaissance, just like the East Asian success stories, require exchange of ideas, more competition, stronger creativity, and above all, the opportunity for all those with talent to build up new businesses can take on the world market. Utajiri sio dhambi. Mwalimu once said, it can be done, play your part. I thank you for listening.
It can be done, play your part. Let us give Ambassador Azizi Mlima another round of applause for that fantastic presentation on leadership and governance. Your Excellency, allow me now to bring onto the stage Mr. Simon Shayo, former UDSM alumni, as he comes to ponder on socio-economic development. As he comes, let's give him a round of applause. This will be followed by Q&A from the remaining of the speakers. Karibu sana.
That should be fine. Your Excellency Thabo Mbeki, the former President of South Africa and Chancellor of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. Your Excellency Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, the former President of the United Republic of Tanzania, and the Chancellor of the University of Dar es Salaam and many other leadership roles. Honorable Professor Mkenda, the Minister for Science and Education, distinguished professors, members of the diplomatic corps, and all present here tonight, allow me to walk on the protocol that has been set. Indeed, I'm very humbled to be here. I know when you start outlining the alumni of the University of Dar es Salaam, I probably will come on the bottom of the list, knowing that those of you who are seated here came to this campus long, long before those of us who are talking here did so. So I'm speaking here with a lot of humility. And having heard from the professors and so eloquent speakers, what else do I need to say? So Your Excellency, Thabo Mbeki, allow me to work on the, Africa has set a tone since long ago, but we did ascertain and affirm that tone in the 2015 Agenda 2063. And questions that should be asked now, 10 years inside the Agenda 63, is are we heading where we wanted to head with Agenda 2063? The space I've been, the topic I've been asked to speak about is just one of the many aspirations, the 7 aspirations that the African people had when we were setting Agenda 2063. So I will probably just ask in terms of questions, are we heading where we want to head? And you said it, Doc, and I don't want to repeat what you said. Mine will be nothing. So until when? So everything I say will be until when? Until when we cease to see the young boys and girls, the sons and daughters of Africa, drowning in the waters of the Suez and other waters, trying to run from their own motherland. Only then will we be able to say Africa has attained socioeconomic development. Until that time, when we will cease to see our brothers and sisters being buried in the debris of falling grounds because of unsafe mining conditions. Only then will we be able to say Africa has attained socioeconomic development. Until when we will start seeing mothers delivering safely and no mother wasting or losing life because of the journey of bringing a life to earth, only then can we say Africa has attained development. Until the time when we will cease to see money flowing from the coffers of our nations to foreign countries in Europe and America, in the individual accounts of our leaders that we have entrusted to those resources, only then can we confidently say that Africa has attained the socioeconomic development it wanted or dreamt to attain. Until the time we'll stop seeing blood flowing into the rivers of the DRC, Southern Sudan, the Biafra of Nigeria, and many other African countries, only then will we be able to say Africa is peaceful, and so this is a continent that can together achieve shared prosperity, develop together. We cannot talk of socioeconomic development as if it is something that you can attain in the sky. Until the time we'll stop seeing those who are talking about the freedom of speech being forced to run from their own countries or have to go to jail for that, only then can Africa claim to have attained socioeconomic and sustainable development. Until the time that every young African who has worked so hard, finished their secondary school or whatever level of school that will bring them to the highest level of education, be able to attain that highest level of education without necessarily having to live and starve long hours without a meal just because they are studying, only then can we say that Africa has attained the development it wanted to attain. So I'm talking here about having, we are proud that we already have almost 50-50 in terms of admission, Prof, if I'm not mistaken. But how many, even if it is 1%, of those are forced to drop because they cannot pay for their education to the final year, while myself and few that can afford 4x4s are driving those because our roads are not good enough. So until then, can we say Africa has attained the journey it wants to attain, the journey of sustainable development? So I'm challenging myself, younger people than me here, other Africans, to try and reignite the African Renaissance by living the dreams of our forefathers, but the dreams of our living leaders who are so much inspiring and yet watching Africa dragging its feet with all the potential that we have. So, Your Excellency, tonight we'll want to hear the conversations about what is it that is holding Africa back. And I'm not going to say what is it because alone I can't. So together, let's ask ourselves, until when will Africa continue to sit on itself, sit on its potential, and watch the world prospering while Africa is becoming a sorry story? Thank you for listening.
Asante sana, thank you very much, Mr. Simon Shayo, University of Dar es Salaam alumni, for your dissection on the socio-economic development as we are looking onto the Africa Day lecture, Town Hall with President Thabo Mbeki. Totally appreciated. I would now like Your Excellency to invite onto the stage none other but Dr. Hezron Makundi from the University of Dar es Salaam to come and guide us onto the question and answer session, which again will pause a moment of reflection by President Thabo Mbeki later on. Dr. Hezron, karibu sana.
Thank you, Austin. Your Excellency, President Thabo Mbeki, kindly receive the humble and sincere apology from our team of organizers for this town hall for not starting on time. We are honored to have you here to engage in this dialogue about the renaissance of our motherland, the African continent. So the discussion will be in two parts. The first part will be to finalize the talks from the prepared speakers, but this time rather shorter, and then the other part will be opening to the audience. So we will start with Professor Anthony van Nieuwkerk, if I got it right, from the University of South Africa, UNISA. He's going to provoke the discussion on the sub-theme on security and Pan-African unity. You can come to the podium. Let's clap for Professor Anthony, and you have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Greetings to His Excellencies, President Mbeki and President Kikwete, and all honored guests and academic leaders and my colleagues and all the students in the hall. Thanks. And thanks for the 5 minutes. I was told 3, but now it's gone up to 5. Let's see how I do. I want to talk about peace and security, and I want to ask a question which my students ask me, which I can't answer. And then I thought, maybe if I ask President Mbeki and President Kikwete, they might be able to give us answers, because they are experienced in this area of peace and security. My question goes like this. The Pan-African vision of the African Union is inspiring. It talks of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena. It's the AU's vision statement, Agenda 2063. On peace and security, the AU undertakes to promote dialogue-centered conflict prevention and resolution in such a manner that by 2020, says the vision, the guns would have fallen silent. In addition, the AU undertakes to promote a culture of peace and tolerance in Africa's children and youth through peace education. The AU also speaks of an Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, shared values and ethics. The question arises, how far have we come with realizing these aspirations? On peace and security, is the African Peace and Security Architecture, APSA, fully functional? Does it inspire peace in Sudan, in South Sudan, the Sahel, the Horn, the Great Lakes region? Does it deter crime, corruption, and exploitation? On a cultural renaissance, have we inculcated the spirit of Pan-Africanism to ensure that the creative arts contribute to Africa's transformation? Have we restored and preserved Africa's cultural heritage and its languages? President Mbeki, President Kikwete, how would you assess our progress? And if you think we are found wanting, then I want to ask, how do we reignite the spirit of peacemaking and peacekeeping in Africa? Where the flame has been doused, how do we reignite it? And then finally, on agency, who must do that? Our visionary leaders, our academics and scholars, our civil society, our citizens, or a combination? Who must lead the reignition of the African Renaissance? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Anthony. Another round of applause for him. So now, for the interest of time, we still have 3 students from the University of Dar es Salaam who are also prepared to engage in this particular topic. I will give them 1 minute and they can speak from where they are. So I will start with Ms. Olivia Pesha, who is a MA student on political science from the University of Dar es Salaam. Just get the mic there and you can speak from there, please, for 1 minute. And then we will open up to the rest, maybe 4 or 5 questions. Karibu.
Asante. Good evening, everyone. I have a question. In reigniting the African Renaissance, one of the aspirations that is to be considered is youth empowerment, because we are considered as the means of production, but also the manpower into bringing about the Renaissance as well as the revival of the Africa that we want. The question comes is, we have seen so far there are a number of youth empowerment programs, but still youth are seen to lag behind in trying to advocate for change, where they sometimes face repressions and other obstacles of such. So what could be done so as to improve the youth empowerment into the African Renaissance and improve the youth into trying to advocate for the African renewal in general?
Olivia, thank you very much. You have done a wonderful job just posing a question, and you set also the environment for His Excellency President Mbeki to also reflect on that. Now I move to Ms. Karen Dika, who is a BA student on actuarial sciences, also from the University of Dar es Salaam. Let's provide the microphone for her also.
Good evening, everyone. All protocols observed. I stand before you as a voice of the youth, representing 60% of our population in Africa. My major concern regarding youth is specifically on the aspect of unemployment. A lot of youth in our country are facing this huge problem, and it seems as though it is a cry for help which is yet to be fully answered. Now, my question is not only targeted to His Excellency, President Thabo Mbeki, it is targeted to all stakeholders here. How are we making sure that we create solutions that are multifaceted, solutions that are integrated for each community to solve and reduce the problem of unemployment, and even create other solutions such as entrepreneurship within the digital, within the machine learning, and the revolutionary space? How are we doing that as stakeholders? Thank you.
Thank you. Your question was very clear. Applaud for her as well. And the third one in the program is Mr. Sabato Nyamsenda, who is a PhD student on political sciences from the University of Dar es Salaam. On my left. After Sabato, I'll open up. I would like to at least ask the participants to be very brief, introduction, and then straight to either the question or the comment. Sabato, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I was asked to prepare a 10-minute presentation, and I'm going to condense it into 1 minute. If I exceed, please bear with me.
Sure.
And I'm not going to ask you questions because young people also have solutions. We can think you constitute 80% of the African population. I am always very envious of the students at UNISA because President Mbeki, when he goes there, he sits down and listens to them. And then later he engages them. So without listening to young people, how is he going to make an intervention? So please give us time, and I hope the ambassadors, professors, why don't you keep quiet and listen to young people? For once, this event is ours. That's the whole meaning of a town hall. A town hall is an engagement. And President Mbeki is the second leader in doing that, after Mwalimu Nyerere in the 60s and 70s. So let's not embarrass ourselves before our visitors. And I'm going to condense, as I said, my presentation in the interest of time. In 2 or 3 minutes, please bear with me, because I burned the midnight candle to prepare it. So I will take from where Dr. Ndros ended, and mine will go to the solution. And I want to propose 2 minimum reforms. The first one is the radical restructuring of the economy to put people's needs at the center. Because the so-called free market and its agency, the private sector, cannot play that role because it's geared towards profit. Our production system, both industrial and agricultural, will have to be reorganized to produce goods that fulfill the needs of our people. These goods will have to be treated as wage goods to be made available to all and sundry, some for free and some at affordable rates. The second one is the radical restructuring of the state to subordinate it to popular power. We might have to think the forms of democratic participation beyond multi-party politics and elections. Now, I don't see these 2 minimum reforms being fulfilled by the present setup of African nation states. Experience has shown us that the African states are too weak to withstand imperialist assaults. Nor do I see them being fulfilled by the African ruling classes, whose survival depends on the maintenance of the status quo. Actually, our rulers keep setting agendas to be fulfilled in the distant future, when they will all be dead, and therefore they will not be held accountable. Things like Vision Agenda 2063. They are very busy telling young people that we are the future of the continent and all that, but we are the present. And if we are the present, then we need agenda now. And that's what Kwame Nkrumah told us. Agenda now. Now I'm therefore, this is the last part of my presentation. I'm therefore speaking of liberatory Pan-Africanism. This means decentering Pan-Africanism from the state and taking it back to the streets where it belonged. From 1900 to 1945 of the Manchester Conference, Pan-Africanism was a grassroots movement that was led by the likes of Garvey, Du Bois, and others in the diaspora. From 1945 to 1960, when it came to the continent, it unified liberation movements. That's why South Africa, ANC, was in Tanzania, out of Pan-Africanism, because we were the ones, our movements united to liberate Africa from colonialism. Now the trouble began when these movements became ruling parties after independence. And they snatched Pan-Africanism away from the masses, and they turned it into a state project to be debated using protocol among heads of states. And therefore, I am proposing that it's time to take it back where it belonged, to the masses. And that will entail building a unified Pan-Africanist grassroots movement that links the streets and villages of Africa, from Cape to Cairo, Morocco to Madagascar, with the working people who are the major victims of the policies that we are talking about at the center. That is the end of my presentation, and I'll be glad to engage more.
Thank you. Let's clap for Sabato. Thank you very much. I believe the audience and President Mbeki have heard you, and he will have a moment to reflect on your recommendations as well. So I open up. I'm looking for hands. Please be brief. Introduce yourself and go straight to the point. I apologize in advance if I'll have to interrupt you, but please let's have an opportunity for a number of others. The hand is there, and then I see the hand there. Upstairs? Okay, yes. We start with these two first.
I'll be very brief, but I would like to first congratulate former President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, for picking the baton from the life of...
Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Gerson Daniel Janga, a master student of Political Science, University of Dar es Salaam. So I would like to congratulate President Mbeki for picking the baton from the like of Cheikh Anta Diop, Kwame Nkrumah and Nyerere for bringing back Africa to its rightful position. I had a question based on the lecture he gave to more than 400 people, and I'll quote the question. He gave it in Johannesburg, where there were different politicians, business people, and academicians. He asked, who we are and where are we going in the global community? And in formulating practical strategies and solutions for future action that would benefit the African masses. If you narrow it down, he was asking for, yes, I'm winding up, for African solution for African problems. I would like to ask him, since that time, nearly 30 years, has he managed to get answer? Correct, completely, partly, or he has not gotten an answer at all?
Thank you very much. The white gentleman in the middle, and then we will take a question upstairs from a lady, if there is one. I see you there.
My question is for Mr. President, Thabo Mbeki.
Your name, please? And
my name is Halil Ibrahim Arpa, and I'm a guest professor from Turkey. I greet you all with my all sincerity. It's a great opportunity to have this talk today because I didn't expect this. I just came here on Sunday. My question is related to South Africa, and I'm wondering, is there any way we misunderstand decolonization? If decolonization is meaning nationalization, as in some political and academic movements, if we name it as Azania, for instance, could be there any way for African Renaissance and to reignite it when it's limited to nations, native, or borders, which are all the words of colonial epistemology? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Upstairs, give the hand to the lady. And there's another gentleman on this side. Okay, I'll come back to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Waridi Jonas from BA in Education. I would like to ask, quoting from Robert Kiyosaki, the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I would want to ask, he said that financial education is the way to revamp our economy. So I would like to ask, how African countries are making strategies in order to provide financial education, especially for those who are not studying economics and business classes.
Thank you. So as I go to the last two questions, let me request my fellow organizers to prepare the stage for President Mbeki to come to this stage so that he will reflect. So there's a lady there downstairs. Be brief, introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Leto John Makajubili. I'm taking Bachelor of Science in Applied Zoology. Pleasure observed. Let me continue from Brother Simon Shile when he said about until when for economic development of Africa. So I think for economic development of Africa, it's when we balance for foreign investments and the African economic. So my question is, how are we going to balance the foreign investment in our African economic development?
Yes. The brother there? Okay. The last one maybe on that side.
Thank you for this opportunity chance. Good evening. I go by the name Sabi Isaac, second year student from University of Dar es Salaam. I'm pursuing Bachelor of Art in Anthropology. Let me go direct to my questions. I have only two questions. Let me go direct. My first question is that this is the African education system preparing young people for realities of the modern job market and how you can help African youth to accomplish their goals and to solve the unemployment consequence. My second question is that how is Africa addressing the challenge posed either internal or external challenge like economic consequence, political instability, disease, unemployment, and climatic change? Thank you for this opportunity chance.
Okay, the very last one. The very last one.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Logic, a student of political science here at the University of Dar es Salaam. First of all, I wanted just to remind ourselves that as we continue with this dialogue, we are standing in between centuries of atrocities, humiliation, and undermination of Africa. And in the future, we have two options: continue to debate forever or taking action. And I suggest that we take action. And so, this reminder is going to answer the question of Mr. Shayo. All the question he posed until when Africa will be free is just answered in the single term. And I can see we are beating around the bush, and some words sound like a taboo to mention. That capitalism that was embraced after independence failed to prove its promise, and so socialism is the only answer, and the only answer Africa can realize its potential. And so,
thank you.
I want just to finish and two seconds to the young people that this African Renaissance shall never be televised and will not be brought from the heaven. It's you and I to take action. This Renaissance will be built by workers in the streets. This Renaissance should be debated in school in our classes. And so by finalizing that, we as a student, we organized an event and we are launching a students organization called Africa Kwetu to continue this legacy.
Thank you very much.
African
Thank you. Thank
unit.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all who had an opportunity to engage, and apologies for those who I could not reach out. I'm sorry. Now I hand over the stage to my colleague, Mr. Austin Makani. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, you did not.
Please respect. So I've finished the session. I hand over to Mr. Makani. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, if it may so please you to please join me on the stage. Thank you so much for your reflection onto some of the questions that have been directed to you. Karibu sana. As he comes, let's put our hands together for His Excellency Thabo Mbeki.
So we don't need that. And thanks a lot, Chancellor of the University of Dar es Salaam, President Kikwete, Minister of Education and Science, Vice Chancellor, Chairperson of Council, friends and comrades. I think it was correct for one of our colleagues here to talk about the fact that we start a bit late. We were informed that because Her Excellency, President of Namibia, had come, and happily you were here to engage her, that we needed to come a little bit later. I think the delay was proper. I'm very, very glad indeed that you stayed so that we can have this short engagement. Our scene setter, Dr. Nzozi, I was very glad when he said, I'm not here today to lecture. I've been looking for a job at the University of Dar es Salaam as a lecturer. I hope they give me a job. The idea was that we should meet here to engage one another on this topic that's on our board here about re-energizing, reigniting the African Renaissance. Not for either President Kikwete or myself to lecture. I think that was said by my comrade there, Sabato, was correct. It was very, very correct indeed that we're not here to answer questions. We're here to engage one another in answering those questions. I'm very, very glad indeed that when he said, even the youth have got answers. So it was not for the youth to pose questions, but to say, this is where we are today, this is where we need to be tomorrow. It's the kind of engagement that we were supposed to have. So you'll excuse me if I don't answer the questions as they've been put. The word Renaissance, we know all of us what it means. It means a rebirth. So when we talk about an African Renaissance, we're talking about an Africa reborn. Dr. Ndlozi, I don't know whether we all know what that means. What is this Africa that we imagine? I think our colleague who talked about socio-economic development did say there are certain things that have gone wrong which should not happen, then we would know that we're being reborn. One of the great strengths, my view, one of the great strengths of the OAU and the AU, these continental organizations, is that they actually attended to this matter. An Africa reborn, what should it look like? As a consequence of which, as a continent, we are very, very rich in terms of policy. I don't know of any major issue facing us as Africans on which there is no continental policy. The politics of our continent, issues about democracy, accountability, good governance, all of that. They are policies. When we're talking about women's empowerment, gender equality, and all of that, they are policies. Issues of youth development, youth empowerment, and so on, culture, education, science and technology, peace and security, all of these things. If I asked, if we had time, I asked the universities here, the students of the University of Dar es Salaam, and say, do they know what AU, not AU, African Continental Policy on Youth Development is? Can you please raise your hands? None. Yet there is. And I think we would find that with regard to many of these policies, which I say exist, and when Dar es Salaam University appoints me lecturer, I will give you the documents. This is part of our challenge. The policy positions exist on the continent, approved by our political leaders, many of them ratified by our parliaments. So there's a policy framework which exists for the renaissance of Africa. One of our comrades just said that the answer is socialism. It's not, that one I know is not in the AU policies. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I know it's not in the policies. There is no shortage of a general, overall, comprehensive policy framework to define the kind of new Africa we want, the Africa reborn. There's a problem. The problem is that the Africans don't know of that. How do we solve it? I don't have an answer to that question. But it's a critical matter that we need to solve. If we say the future of our continent, as Dr. Ndlozi was saying, this issue of self-reliance, the future of our continent is defined by ourselves. He said it's not going to be defined by the Chinese or the Indians or the Americans or Russians, but ourselves, correct. But I'm saying here is African institutions which say, with regard to that question, this is what our future should be politically, economically, peace and security, this and that and the other. And yet as Africans, we don't know that. That's a serious problem. President Kikwete, other people, his age, my age, a bit younger perhaps, will also know that at a certain point in our history on the continent, we had a number of organizations focused on this task of the transformation of our continent. Some of our presenters have put this matter about agency. What's our role? These visions that we have about our continent, how do you bring them about? Earlier, there used to be on the continent a Pan-African youth movement made up of youth organizations who would meet and discuss and say, what do we do about this continent of ours? Young people. Where is it now? It's disappeared. There was an African Students' Union. And the students' unions of various countries all across the continent would meet and ask this question and answer it, what do we about our continent, including its education and all of that. That disappeared. There was an organization called the All African Trade Union Unity, which brought together all of the African trade unions, organized political organization, formation of the organized workers on the continent about the future of our continent. Disappeared. And there was PAO, Pan-African Women's Organization. PAO still exists. I saw its president not long ago. She participated in the inauguration of the president of Namibia, was here earlier today. We didn't have time to discuss PAO. It exists, but you don't feel its weight. The voice of the African women That's the body which brought together all of these African women's organizations who would say, as the women of Africa, this is where we want Africa to go. I'm saying it exists, but I don't feel its weight. It's an issue of agency. Our colleagues ask about how do you solve a question about youth employment, youth empowerment, and all of that. I'm saying that the youth need to be party to the answering of that question. But they don't have the organizations on the continent which give them the necessary power as a youth to act together, to say, we as the youth of Africa, this is what we're saying. Whether it's employment or whatever. One of the organs of the African Union is an ECOSOC, which brings the cultural, social, and organizations. And that is the task of it. Well, composition of it is to bring in the ordinary African people into that process, represented by various organizations, economic, cultural, political, whatever. Would serve side by side with the governmental institutions of the African Union. But if I ask any one of you here to say, has it ever come to Tanzania, that ECOSOC? We are an official body of the African Union. We are not government, we are not ministers. But we are trade unionists, we are youth organizers, we are women organizers, and so on. But we are an official structure. Yeah. I'm sure it's never come here. I don't know if other African countries ever come to. Because essentially it exists on paper. What's the problem? I'm going to tell you one or two secrets. But since we're all here agreed on secrecy rules, please don't tell anybody else. There were presidential elections in Cote d'Ivoire 4 years ago. The opposition parties got together and they contacted me to say, as you know, there are presidential elections in Cote d'Ivoire later in the year, but there are certain things that are not right. And so we'd like that the presidential election should be postponed so that we, the Ivorians, can sort out the things that are not right. And one of the things that they said was not right was the constitution, composition of the electoral commission. The matter had been taken up to the African people, the Court on Human and People's Rights, which had looked at the question about the composition of the Electoral Commission of Cote d'Ivoire and took a decision that that commission needed to be reconstituted because it was not in a fit state to conduct any election. That's a judgment of the African Court, and said this is what it must be changed and these things must be addressed and therefore it must be reconstituted. The government of Cote d'Ivoire ignored that decision. So the opposition, when they write to me, they say, part of what we want time for is for us as Ivorians to discuss a matter like that, to get the commission properly constituted to run the next elections and other matters. Can you please talk to the African Union, to ECOWAS, and United Nations to help us to address this particular matter? Yeah. So, which I did. So I communicated this message to all of these bodies. To cut that very long story short, nothing happened. I then write to the AU Commission. And I said to the AU Commission, please don't observe those elections. Because held under the conditions that the opposition was talking about, it was obvious that you could never say that those elections would be free and fair. And therefore I say to the AU Commission, don't observe them, because if you do, you legalize them. So, of course, they ignored me. They observed the elections. But what was interesting is that the commission then responded in writing to say to me, but President, you of all people know very well that the things that you are asking us to do and not to do, we can't act on, because the rules and regulations and policies and whatever of the AU don't allow us, the Commission, that kind of space. So in a sense, you are saying, but we are surprised that you of all people should raise these matters with us. I'm about to finish that story. So I responded to the Commission. I was very glad that they had written in response to say, thanks for your letter, but you are wrong for the following reasons. So I wrote back to them. And my response was 10 pages. I can see it rumbling here. The letter was too long. People, that's what they think. It was 10 pages. And the reason it was 10 pages is because I was answering the Commission. I was answering their letter, pointing them to specific decisions of the African Union, which empower them to do the things that I was saying they must do. And they didn't know. They were not aware of these policy positions. For instance, the Charter on Democracy, President Kikwete would know this. Charter on Democracy, Elections, Governance, and so on. It specifically says, where the Commission deems that the conditions for the holding of elections have not been proper, the Commission must not observe those elections. It's in the Charter. But the Commission didn't know that. That's why they went and observed those elections. The point I'm trying is make, so that's a secret between us. Then at a certain point, President Kikwete and the others, by this time I'm retired, so I'm not guilty. They take a good decision to restructure the African Union so that it becomes an effective instrument in terms of achieving all of these policy positions on which the Union has agreed. So the restructuring process takes place. And part of what is done, what drives the restructuring process is, let's reduce the size of the Commission. Commission is 10 people, AU Commission, including the chair. Let's trim it a bit, make it more efficient, cost-effective, and all of that. And part of what that reform did was to merge two commissions. The Commission on Political Affairs and the Commission on Peace and Security. The current situation now is that you have a commission of the African Union on politics, peace and security, or political affairs, peace and security. It was a very bad decision. It might be cost effective in the sense that now you have only one commissioner instead of two. But the problem with it is that you are then killing what needs to be your lead commission, the Commission on Political Affairs. Simply because of the volume of work with regard to peace and security. The matter that were raised in our agenda here about peace and security, Pan-Africanism and all that, you know, it's a top-heavy matter on our continent. Conflict in the Sahel, conflict in Sudan, in the two Sudans, in the Horn of Africa, and in Great Lakes, and so on. Naturally, the commissioner responsible for peace and security must attend to all of these things. You add the burden of the politics, they will say, no, I'll come to that tomorrow. And yet, the Commission on Political Affairs is the lead commission in terms of attending to the strategic challenges on the continent. If you say, which AU says, the issue of African unity is important. Dr. Ndlozi was saying we must act together. The enemies come for any one of us, member states of the African community, from outside. He was saying we must get together and unite and say we stand together as Africans. Who is the leader to produce that outcome? It's the Political Affairs Commission. It's not peace and security or commerce or whatever else. It's that commission which leads in terms of the building of this new South Africa, the new Africa, defined in terms of, it's a Political Affairs Commission. But in the restructuring, it got killed. Because in the new Commission on Political Affairs, Peace and Security, it gets overwhelmed by peace and security. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm pointing to these two examples, colleagues, is to say, in terms of looking at this renaissance and what to do about it, if you look at the institutions of the African Union, this continental organization which has given us a whole range of policy positions in terms of what is to be done. Who does it? This agency question has been raised. I'm saying we have an AU commission, which certainly for many years has not been doing what it should do. As a consequence of which, heads of state and government, they meet and they take very major policy positions. What happens after that? Nothing. Even in terms of a simple process of reporting, when I was president of the Republic of South Africa, as confessed, South Africans here might correct me, I don't remember a single instance when President Mbeki comes back from an AU summit and reports to the nation what the summit decided. I don't think we ever did it. So me and my delegation, we know what was decided. The country doesn't know. I'm saying that in looking at this question about reigniting the Renaissance, the question of agency becomes important. And the point that has been made is very correct. I think the phrase that was used was, we must take this notion of Pan-Africanism and so on back to the streets. That it got captured by the politicians and the bureaucrats. No, we must take it back to the people. That's correct. But I'm saying, if we say back to the people, what do we do about this history? We had African people's organizations that died. Who's going to resurrect them? I'm saying you've got the institutions of the African Union which have got an obligation to help implement these policies which have been agreed upon. But you have an AU Commission which does not even know what its own duties and rights and obligations are, until you have to write them a 10-page letter just to point to page. Look at page 1, look at page 15, look at page 17 and a half. What do we do about all of that? The last institution I should mention are the political parties on our continent. Because I think it's the first responsibility to reignite this renaissance and the political parties. If I look at the South African case, I'm talking about the ANC now, that's my organization. Over the years, the ANC has walked away from the African agenda. I mean, sit there, you can see it, that the engagement of the ANC with the African challenges over the years has weakened and weakened and weakened. People are preoccupied with what to do with South Africa and so on, which is sure you've got to be preoccupied with that. But you can't do it at the expense of the rest of the continent. But that's what's happening. I see Ambassador Amimpongwe here in front of me. I'm finished with that story, President Kikwete. Some years back, I was invited by the youth of CCM, to come here. And they had a retreat in Zanzibar. So they said they wanted me to come and join them in that retreat. So I came and we went. So these young people, they say, now President, the late Ben Mkapa, may his soul rest in peace, was also there. So they said, now President, you see, that front row, those are veterans of our struggle for the independence of Tanganyika and so on. Sitting in that front row. The rest is the youth. Now, what's happened, President, they say? If you look at us, I'm a lecturer at the University of Dar es Salaam. I'm an accountant, that one is a lawyer, this and that and the other. We've got skills which are globally marketable. I'm Tanzanian, but I can get a job as an accountant anyway. You see these old people here, the veterans. You give them a mobile phone. They don't even know how to use it. They can't teach us any of those things. We can teach them. But here is the reason we asked you to come. These veterans here, many of them were teachers. But they were ready to sacrifice their position so that our country should be liberated. It's very principled people. Sure, they don't have the skills I have to operate a cellular phone. I have those skills, but I don't have the value system which they have. And the problem is that we are going to develop from this as a youth to become the national leaders of Tanzania. With all the skills that we have, but without the values. Can you please help us to get these two things to emerge, the skills and the values? One of them, a young lady, says, you know, President, I contested for the position in the Youth League. And I was defeated. But nevertheless, so as an official, secretary or whatever, nevertheless, I was elected onto the executive. So we discussed the matter of why she got defeated. And she says, it's because my competitor used money. Bought votes. And they've got more votes than I did. So I say that worries me. That the youth of CCM are already using money to buy votes to get elected. And she said, President, the matter does not end there. This young comrade of mine, who had the money and bought the votes, is a drug dealer. He got the money from selling drugs. I'm saying I'm ending with that story because I'm saying this reigniting of the African Renaissance, the first responsibility lies with our political parties on the continent, inspired by the spirit of Pan-Africanism and the sense of sacrifice which those veterans were sitting, those one were meeting in Zanzibar. By that spirit of self-sacrifice being loyalty to principle and loyalty to this Pan-African perspective. We're talking about Mwalimu Julius Nyerere here. We need more Nyereres today. Our political parties need more Nyereres. The tragedy is that President Kikwete, I'm sure you and I, when we sit in the corner and we go through each one of these political parties on the continent, we would come to the same conclusions, that things are not right. In the end, what does that mean? It means that the university, the students, and I don't know, I'm not going about the lecturers and professors, the students. The students of the University of Dar es Salaam need to sit together and say, we want to be part of the process of reigniting this Renaissance. We want to take our place, respond to our own responsibility to define the future of the continent, and answer the question themselves, well, what do we do as university students of this university? What do we do to achieve that objective? It's a task. I'm giving this as a task. The Chancellor of the university has agreed with me that I can give you that task. This university, it's an old home to me. I've been here many times, and the reason for that is because this particular university was the lead university in helping the continent to answer the question from 1960 when the continent gets independent. This university was very central to answering the question for independent Africa. What do you do with your independence? Now you've got it. You fought for it. Very well done. But what do you do with it? This academic institution here was very, very central to answering the question, what does liberated Africa do with its liberation? I think this university has got that task again, to say, what do we do? What do we do as this university to reignite the renaissance of Africa, to which people like Mwalimu Nyerere devoted their lives? And the CEO of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation has said to me that what I must say to you, the students, that please contact the foundation, his foundation, Thabo Mbeki Foundation, because they are starting the process of the reactivation of the African youth, including the students, to organize themselves on the continent and to focus on this task. So he says, please, he said, I must say that, please contact the foundation so that we can work together. Agency. Who are the people who are going to bring about these changes about which we agreed? It's us. But in order to do that, we must be organized. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming, and thanks for listening.
Distinguished delegates, let's give His Excellency Thabo Mbeki another big round of applause. Thank you very much. I've requested Your Excellency to remain back on the stage for two things. One, I will now invite His Excellency Dr. Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete to present a token of appreciation to you. Number two, we shall have a vote of thanks, and while at that, group photos. With your permission, now as President Dr. Jakaya Kikwete is coming, let's give him a warm round of applause onto the stage.
That was something. This is my senior brother, the Thabo Mbeki I have known for many, many years. Well, he's a young adult now, but he's still very dynamic. You can see clarity of thought, eloquence in speech. That is, Your Excellency, Dr. Thabo Mbeki, former President of the Republic of South Africa, and our esteemed guest, Minister for Education, Science and Technology, Professor Thabo from Kenda, Chairperson of the University Council, Ambassador Mwanaidi Majal, Vice Chancellor Professor William Anangise, Acting High Commissioner of the South African Embassy, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Let me again begin by thanking, on behalf of the University of Dar es Salaam and on my own behalf, our deepest appreciation and warmest welcome to our esteemed guest, His Excellency Dr. Thabo Mbeki, former President of the Republic of South Africa, and one of the most revered Pan-African thinkers and statesmen of our time. Your Excellency, we are most grateful for you to consider the University of Dar es Salaam to host this year's Thabo Mbeki lecture. It's an honor for which we highly appreciate. We commend your vision and tireless efforts to reposition Africa to its rightful place in global affairs, where it is not a passive observer, but an active and respected participant in shaping international relations and global power dynamics. The theme of this year's lecture, the state of the continent, reigniting the African Renaissance, could not be more timely or more urgent. You have set the tone for serious reflection and have reignited a long-burning flame, the desire for African transformation driven by African thought, African agency, African leadership, and the African people. The winds of change are gathering storm across the continent, but what Africa needs now is not cosmetic reforms, not rhetoric, but profound structural and ideological transformation that redefines governance, economic models, and intellectual production on African terms. The demand for change is growing, and it is a demand that we, as leaders, intellectuals, and institutions, must respond to with clarity and courage. Your Excellency, we are especially inspired by your deliberate inclusion of young people and emerging intellectuals on this podium. That gesture speaks volumes about your continued belief in the power and potential of Africa's youth. They are indeed the lifeblood of our continent's future. I join you in calling for increased intra-African youth engagement, facilitated by homegrown Pan-African programs that foster dialogue, unity, and purpose across the borders. President, when you spoke about the role of this university, I remember when I was here, I was a student here, 72 to 75. That was quite a long time by any standards. But you can imagine at that time, Professor Shivji was a very young man, radical, class struggles in Africa, writing articles. And at that time, President, we had a team of professors and lecturers from across the globe, but all of them with that revolutionary mind. Walter Rodney was here. And he wrote his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, when he was here. We used to have ideological classes every Sunday. And those of us who were attending those classes used to call ourselves Sunday metaphysicists. We used to invite people to come and talk. And at that time, the University of Dar es Salaam was red, dynamic, and we were the bastion of thinking about the African Revolution. One incident I would remember when I was student leader here was the day when Gasha Butelezi came. As you see these guys here, he made a brilliant speech. Everybody was quiet, very attentive. And then when it came question and answer session, I think this was 1973. The first question was, you gave us a very brilliant speech on your contribution to the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. But can you answer one simple question? Why are you still not in prison? Nelson Mandela is in prison. Governor Mbeki, your dad, was in prison. That Logri, Walter Sisulu, and even. But why? And the other question that was asked, and the Boers have allowed you to travel and come to all the places but Tanzania. What the Boers at that time used to call Tanzania the bastion of terrorism in Africa. Then he says, "Oh, I came here, it is their own mistake." Okay, fine. The other question which irritated him was, what is your position on the armed struggle? Let's go so angry. He says, where are the guns? Then, you know, in those days when we had problems with anybody we don't want here, would simply start, go home, go home, go home, go home. Then students started chanting, go home, go home, go home. He left the stage, climbed down. He almost forgot his wife here. In those days, we used to be quite active. The other incident I'll tell you was when Sir Alec Douglas Hume came. He was the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom. And at that time, the British were playing games with the question of the independence of Zimbabwe. So some people told us that he's coming. I was a student leader. What we did was to organize buses. We loaded students onto the buses to the airport with our placards, billboards, picketing. At that time, His Excellency John Malechela was Foreign Minister. So we went there with our buses, and the police said, no, you cannot be allowed to go to inside the airport. Then I was asked to go and talk to the Foreign Minister. And at that time, Patrick Koro, he's now late, the husband of our late professor, Martha, who died also recently, was there. They asked me, what do you want here? I said, no, we just came here to express our displeasure with what the British are doing. Why hasn't every other youth come? I said, sir, I can't answer on their behalf. I can only speak on behalf of the students of the University of Dar es Salaam. Then he said, okay, fine. Can you sign an indemnity that if anything happens to the Foreign Secretary, he'll be accountable? I said, okay, fine. I said, okay, fine, just give me the book to sign. Then Foreign Minister Malechela says, you young men, you look very arrogant. It's not arrogant. So then I signed, committing myself that if anything happens to the British Foreign Secretary, I'll be accountable. Well, we were allowed to go in because I had signed. They told us to stay at certain position. But then when we realized the British Super VC-10 was going to other direction, we said, let's go there. So as the plane was stopping, we also stood there. Hey, home, go home, home, go home, home, go home. Our student leader at that time was Martin Shinganya. And we said, don't worry, you just start reading our message. So we're reading the message. The British gentleman came down the stairs. So at some point I got worried because these young people now were trying to throw papers at him. But fortunately, he left unharmed. So I can recite so many stories of how committed we were to the struggle that was ongoing. But it was a combination of many things. The type of professors we had and the time we had. Because at the time, this was the time when even the national mood, the national aspirations were to fight for the independence of this country. Well, I'm the Chancellor. We have to reinvent ourselves as a university. What is it that is going to be our agenda? What is it that we are going to pursue? I think that's a message. You left it with us, leave it with us, we sit down with everyone. And as long as Professor Shivji is now a Professor Emeritus, they're still there nurturing the people. Penina is still there. No. So that's a message. But what is important to me, President, is you are talking about African Renaissance. President Mbeki is the brain behind the whole concept of the African Renaissance. He presented this idea at the OAU summit in Algiers. And it was picked from there. A committee was set up with him, Chairperson Obasanjo, Abdullahi Wade, and the others. Worked on it. It came to be translated itself into NEPAD, New African Partnership for African Development. So for him to talk about reigniting, he is the right person to talk about it. And you and me are retired, but not very much tired. You expressed your displeasure with the reforms. They happened after I left. So I'm not part of that reforms. There was a time when I think President Kagame consulted us to give our opinion. Some of us gave a different opinion because this was chaired by President Kagame when they looked at it. So we had some ideas, but we thought they had already made up their mind. And when you are out of office, what you are doing is just giving advice. And when our advice was not heeded to, sure, you are one of them. Well, what else do we do? It is those who were in office then, but I hope at some point they will appreciate. I agree with you entirely. Our organization is essentially political. So the Directorate of Political Affairs is the key directorate. But Africa has a huge problem of insecurity. You end one crisis, another one erupts. It's just like the crisis in Sudan. It just came from nowhere. Two generals fighting virtually for nothing, but they have destroyed the country. Khartoum is not the Khartoum that used to be. They're crazy guys. They're just bombing the place. So there are still a lot of security problems, security challenges. But I agree with you, President, there is need, and it is important, as you said, our universities also should take interest about what is going on the continent and what is it that they can advise. So we feel glad that you chose our university, but you are not surprised. You are one of our alumni here, yes, and you are one of the people that this university offered a PhD, honorary PhD to you. So we're glad that you are giving back to your university, as some of us are also doing, giving back to the university that gave us the education that we're having now. Well, in that spirit and further expression of our esteem, it is now my privilege to present to you the academic shower. What is it now? Mbona mnakaa mbali? Jamani, hata hawajulikani walipo. Okay. Yeah, we're going to present to you the academic shower, a humble but heartfelt token of our appreciation for your outstanding contribution to the university, the academia, to Africa, and to humanity at large. May it remind you always our respect, our gratitude, and our abiding bond. Excellency, thank you very much. Let me now present it. Where do we do? Where? Here.
A big round of applause. Can we have the remaining 2 chairs? They're supposed to have 7 chairs on the stage. Can we please be seated as I request may I request onto the stage Honorable Minister Professor Adolf Nkenda. May I request onto the stage the Vice